Hi, my name is Celia Khanna with Marine Technology TV, and I'm here today with Shay Quinn, Product Line Manager and Sentinel Mission Lead at Teledyne Web Research, Scott Glenn, Professor at Rutgers University and one of the teachers working on the Sentinel mission, and Oscar Schofield, another professor at Rutgers University and Scott's partner on the project. If you can start by just each stating your name, your role, and then giving a very brief career overview, that would be awesome.
Sure. My name is Shay Quinn. As you mentioned, I'm the product line manager at Teledyne Web Research for a group of underwater autonomous vehicles called Slocum gliders. I'm also the project lead for the Sentinel mission, which is the project we're working on right now with Rutgers University. I've been working with subsea tech, various subsea vehicles for over 15 years. First as an engineer, and then as an engineering project lead. And now for the past 5 years, I've worked at Teledyne as a product line manager. So I've been deeply involved with ocean tech for a long time and excited to see where we're going with it.
All right, I'm Scott Glenn. I'm a professor at Rutgers, the teacher in one of the classes that's working on the Sentinel. And so I was a student here at Woods Hole many years ago in the 1980s. Worked at some other places you may have heard of, Harvard University, Shell Oil, and now at Rutgers. I study hurricanes. I use autonomous systems and remote sensing data to improve the models and the forecasts, and hopefully we've made some improvements that help save lives.
Hi, I'm Oscar Schofield. I'm a professor at Rutgers. I'm a biological oceanographer. I study a lot of how changes in weather and climate are both flips. And to do that well, for the last 30 years at Rutgers, I've been working on developing ocean observing networks, and a lot of the technology Sentinel represents is key to that.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the Sentinel mission and the collaboration between Teledyne and Rutgers. So how did this collaboration come to be? How is the work being split? And for each of you, what role have you had with this mission?
So that collaboration began in the 1990s. Doug Webb and I met at a conference at MIT, and I was talking about the need for ocean observing systems, and Doug was talking about this new concept called a glider. And we got together at that meeting, and we sat in the back row and talked all day until the conference ended, and the janitors came to clean up and told us we had to leave because they're turning off the lights. And ever since that day, we've been working together. Doug has been a great engineer building these vehicles, and we are the scientists that try to go out and use them to study the ocean. And we also use them as a teaching tool, which is what we're doing today.
So I joined Teledyne Web Research about 5 years ago, and it was immediately apparent how important Rutgers University and Scott and Oscar and their staff there are to gliders. You know, they're our probably closest academic partner. They've been using gliders just about as long as gliders have been around, and really pushing the boundaries of what we can do and what we can study with those. And it became pretty apparent as soon as we started developing a newer version of our glider called the Sentinel glider, that we would suddenly be able to do something that had never been done before, push the boundaries of how long we can keep one of these vehicles out to sea. Slocum gliders as a technology, as a platform, were built with the idea of being incredibly energy efficient and being able to go out to sea and do this persistent data gathering of oceanographic data for months at a time. But now with our newer vehicle that we developed in the past years, we have the ability to stay out there, not just months, but years at a time. And in the past, Rutgers University with Teledyne have done missions where we sent gliders across ocean basins. And we said we've been able to do across the Atlantic, across the Indian Ocean, across different ocean basins. And now we sort of have a platform and a vehicle where we can take that next step and actually do a worldwide circumnavigation.
So I want to start kind of touching on the glider a little bit more because you've started to talk about it. And so, Shay, if you could kind of give us a little bit of an overview of the glider specs, and then what makes it unique and fit for this mission specifically.
Sure. So our standard Slocum gliders that have been around for 25 years now, we've really over the years been improving them, the technology and the ways that they can stay out to sea longer. And as we made improvements to these gliders, they started getting bigger. They got longer. We would add more energy bays. We'd add new technologies. And eventually we'd realize that it would be easier to make the glider itself just a bigger vehicle in a more compact package. And that's sort of where we have this newer version of our vehicle, which we're calling the Slocum Sentinel glider. And that vehicle basically just takes the capabilities of a standard glider and scales it up. So it has 3.5 times as many batteries as a standard glider. It has a much larger buoyancy drive, which is the way that gliders move through the water is that they change the volume of the vehicle so it sinks and floats throughout the water column, and as it does so, moves in this zigzag pattern up and down while it's sampling data. So we have more buoyancy drive, allowing it to move a little more quickly through the water. We've just improved its robustness, improved its ability to stay out there for very long periods of time. And so now we have a vehicle that's scaled up to really take on some of these ultra long endurance missions that we're working on, like the Sentinel mission.
As a biologist, while the Slocum glider, the traditional one, has been an amazing tool, it's changed how we do the work. Often we can't carry the biological sensors for a long time at sea because they're very power intensive. Sentinel now is going to allow us to take acoustic, active acoustic sensors and sensors that will deal directly with the biology and do things we couldn't have dreamed of doing in a sustained way.
So on the flip side of that, then, Scott and Oscar, if you guys could touch on what makes Rutgers a fit partner for this work, and then what are you and your students bringing to the table?
Sure. Rutgers has been a leader in innovative technologies for ocean observing for 35 years. So we've established many of those technologies that have been then either nationalized or globalized and are being used around the world. And in that process, we've developed friendships and partnerships with other ocean observing communities scattered around the world. And to accomplish a global mission like this, we can't do it on our own. We have to rely on our friends at all these glider ports distributed around the world. And they are all part of the same team, part of the same group that's working to put this mission together. We've worked with them for years. So there's a lot of decades of trust that's built up between this community, all looking to help this glider make this journey around the world. And one of the unique things that we bring in is the students. The students are so important to that. When we first started this off and we were challenged to cross the Atlantic 15 years ago, we were challenged by the head of NOAA to do it with students. And we said, that's going to be hard. Not only do we have to do something, increase the duration of our gliders by a factor of 10, we're going to have students that we have to do it with. Now you don't even think of not doing it with students. So it's a big change. The students bring so much to the table. They are so active and excited and looking at the data. It's so many more eyes that can be put on the system to help this glider get across.
I will back that up. The amount of work that undergraduate, graduate, PhD students at Rutgers have done to help prepare for this mission in terms of path planning and creating models, looking at data, helping us analyze, data that we're getting back from the vehicle as we're testing it, it's really made a huge impact in terms of getting us ready and increasing that confidence for this kind of mission.
I love hearing how long the collaboration's been going on and just how connected of a group this is. I think that's really awesome. So, what makes it new and exciting this time? And then, if you can just go over, when you're starting, what the hopeful end date is, what kind of data is going to be collected, just the kind of the specs of the overall mission.
You should start that.
All right, yeah, sure. So this mission is going to be the first ever attempt at a global circumnavigation by an autonomous underwater vehicle. And in order to do that, we need to follow certain rules of a circumnavigation for it to be a real circumnavigation. And this is something that actually the Rutgers students researched and made sure that we would be accomplishing in this way. We have to cross the equator twice. We have to stay above and below certain latitudes. So you're not just, circling Antarctica and saying you've gone the whole way around the world. And you have to hit 2 different antipodes, which are spots on the globe where if you were to drill directly through the core of the Earth, they're on opposite sides of the globe, and you'd be able to touch 2 of them throughout the course of the journey.
Mhm.
So they've planned a path for us that does that. What that path involves is we're starting here on Cape Cod, launching out of Woods Hole tomorrow. And our first leg of the journey will take us to the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. From there, we'll go down to South Africa, from South Africa to Western Australia, from Western Australia to New Zealand, from New Zealand to South America, and from South America back up to Cape Cod. So we have various legs along this journey. Really what makes this harder than anything that we've tried to do before is these legs of this journey that are farther than we've ever really gone with a glider in the past. The farthest leg of this journey is from New Zealand to South America, and it's going to be over 15,000 kilometers. And that's an incredibly long journey for a autonomous vehicle that's only 8 feet long to travel by itself over the course of, several months. So we finally have a vehicle that's capable of doing this. It's just putting it in the water and setting it on its way. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so those are some long legs that we have to accomplish with this glider. And to do that, the path planning is critical. How are we going to get from point A to B? And to do that, we want to use ocean models as roadmaps. We want to go with the currents and use the currents to help speed our journey along. And so we look at the ocean global models that we have out there to provide those roadmaps. And there's maybe 3 really, major ocean models, but the roadmaps they give us are different. And so it's like you have to cross the country and you're given 3 different roadmaps and they disagree and you don't know which one's right. And you have to figure that out along the way. And there's no gas stations or anything else to stop. So it's a challenge. So we have this path planning activity that we do where we're looking at the different models and looking at the uncertainty and finding areas where it's uncertain and trying to figure out which model is best. And we'll be using that along this journey the entire way to help guide where we go. One of our other challenges along the path is all the hazards we could encounter. So the students have documented the hazard maps. And if you look at the hazard maps they produced, you go, we shouldn't even try. There's hazards everywhere. But okay, so you have to be careful about those. There's some places where you have to avoid shipping activity, some places fishing activity, some places might be sharks, some places, giant squid, other places remoras or flying fish. So there's all different kinds of hazards that we have to worry about and take into account as we move.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I guess not awesome with all the hazards, but it sounds like a wonderful challenge. And it's great to hear how you guys are taking the challenges that you do know exist and preparing as best as you can. And I guess a follow-up question to that would be, for any challenges that you face while the glider is out at sea, how do you manage? I mean, I know challenges are a very broad topic, right? You could face a lot of different issues, but how are you going to manage challenges when the glider's out at sea, if anything new pops up?
So the nice thing about these gliders is that they've been designed in a way that they're designed in a way to stay out to sea for long periods of time. And that includes being able to adapt to certain small failures that may occur while you're out to sea, or be able to adapt and change and continue on your way. And even if they have a larger failure or something happens to them, like they do get struck by a shark, let's say, there's ways that the glider can surface itself and continue to communicate shoreside and let you know its position and that kind of a thing. The challenge here really is that we're going on these very remote legs. We're going to the middle of oceans, which if there is something that happens, there's not going to be an easy way to recover this or fix it. So that's where this really becomes part of the challenge, is that, we are sending this along and there is no safety net for a lot of this mission. We've put all the safety nets from a technology standpoint that we can in place, but at a certain point, it's, sink or swim, quite literally.
Well, over the years that we've developed within the gliders a strong will to live, and they have a self-survival instinct built in, where they have emergency things that they will do if they're in trouble. And so there's emergency thrusters on this glider, so that if something is holding them down, like we've had before, those thrusters can engage and bring it more quickly to the surface. It can use more of its buoyancy pump to come to the surface. It can eject a weight so that it brings it up. So there's several things that will try to get it back to the surface. And once it's at the surface, if it can still fly, we can get home somehow. We've done this before. And if not, it's at least broadcasting where it is, and it'll become a drifter, and it'll drift close to some other country. But these are the risks that we have to accept. We want to get time on the vehicle. We could get time on the vehicle by just putting it offshore here, Cape Cod, and stay at that point for a year in the safety of, known areas. But
within reach of land.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to go do something fun, something challenging, go to places that haven't been really touched by the kind of sampling we'll be doing for science, in the way that we're going to be doing it. And that's what makes this fun.
Shay, you just now mentioned scientific data. And so I want to pivot a little bit and talk about what kind of data will be collected on the mission, and then how will that data get used?
Okay, so the main sensor that's on this glider is called a CTD. It's a conductivity, temperature, and depth sensor. So it tells us the depth that the glider's at, it tells us the temperature of the water, and it also tells us the conductivity, which we translate into salinity. So you end up with temperature and salinity profiles. And these are some of the key variables that are assimilated into the ocean models that are used to forecast the ocean, to forecast marine heat waves, to forecast tropical cyclones like hurricanes. And so it's one of the key data sets. We have a lot of data from space looking down at the surface, but very little subsurface. And this is the key data set that's assimilated. So every time the glider surfaces, it'll check its GPS location, it'll phone home, it'll make sure it's safe, it'll send us the data, and then that'll go over through the global telecommunication systems to all the modeling centers worldwide, and it'll get assimilated. So not only is there this scientific record, it's impacting the forecast models that the glider is using itself to cross the ocean. And you can often see this trail of good agreement behind it as it makes its way across, and a look of uncertainty in front of it that we're trying to explore. That's one of the main uses of the main sensor, the CTD. And Shale.
Yeah, we have one other sensor on this vehicle that we were very lucky to get from one of our customers and partners at Dalhousie University. They have a group called the Ocean Tracking Network, and that group does a lot of work with tagged marine animals. And so they lent us a sensor called the Vemco VMT, but it's basically a receiver to listen for pings essentially coming from these tagged marine animals. So of course, as we're going throughout this journey, we'll be making stops at various landfall at various stops throughout this. And while we're getting close to shore, we can probably expect that we will get some returns from tagged marine animals in those areas. What we're really hoping, though, and this is really kind of a needle in the haystack, is that if we are in the middle of the ocean or somewhere somewhat unexpected, and we're getting returns from a tagged animal in those areas, it could really tell us a lot about how those animals migrate, their habits throughout different seasons. So really kind of getting a data point in an area that you're not necessarily expecting a data point could have some pretty interesting impacts on those collaborative efforts to tag and track those kind of animals.
It's funny you mentioned Dalhousie, because I actually did my master's program at
Oh,
Dalhousie, and I live in
very nice.
Halifax now. So yeah,
Oh,
very
yeah.
familiar. Great. Well, I mean, all of that sounds, I mean, awesome. I think it's great that, like you said, you're going to be, collecting consistent data, and then you'll have hopefully these other random points that will pop up and kind of create a more robust image. So I think that's really, really exciting. Talking about autonomy, as we're all aware, autonomy is a growing trend in the maritime industry for a million different reasons. And so I just want you guys to touch on, what role will this mission play in the greater trend of autonomy? And is this reflexive at all of what the industry might look like in the future in terms of more autonomy or used in different ways?
From my perspective, from a technology perspective, even in my career of 15 years in this space, you've seen the growth of autonomy. And as the technology is becoming more advanced and there's better ways to have communications and endurance for these vehicles, it's grown, quite a bit. And gliders, I think, are one of the best examples of that. There's, hundreds of them out to sea, and they're gathering all this data for weeks or months at a time that's feeding into these models and helping scientists and really kind of increasing the amount of data points, the amount of casts that we're getting of ocean data, quite exponentially compared to a more traditional means, which would have been, say, a research vessel and taking a cast a little bit at a time off a ship. What I think this is going to show is that whereas many autonomous vehicles are still somewhat limited by performing in spaces that are close to shorelines, performing in areas that they're easily able to be recovered, or they need to have a chase boat with them or something like that. If we have a glider that can go to the middle of an ocean and stay there and gather data, we're proving it throughout this mission that we're not scared to send a vehicle to those kind of areas and stay there and gather valuable data in places that, again, are pretty undersampled, especially at the subsurface level. So that's where we see this as, at least that's where I see this as important, is being able to say that, whichever kind of sensor and hardware you plan to put on this vehicle, we can put it someplace remote and someplace that needs to be persistently monitored or persistently have data being gathered from that space for long periods of time, and really increase the amount of data that you're getting back from that platform.
Yeah, the ocean is vast. It can be quite harsh, and it's woefully undersampled, but it's critical to understanding our weather and our climate on our planet. And so to do that, we have to go out and sample it. And there's not enough ships in the world to sample that vast ocean and to survive all those harsh conditions. So the autonomous systems are our future for that. We need that to better understand the ocean and put it in our models so we can better predict the future. And so there is this growing need for autonomy. Yes, we have to get these technologies out. This is a new technology space that this glider is in. It allows us to fill another gap, and that's really exciting for that. And the autonomy, another important piece of that for the marine industry, it increases the number of people that can go to sea. To be a go-to-sea oceanographer that actually goes out on one of those boats, it's a pretty narrow window that you have to fit through. You can't have a lot of other responsibilities. But by using satellites in space or mathematical models or these autonomous systems that are out there doing that sampling, you can be an oceanographer and still do whatever else it is that you need to do in your life. And so now you've vastly increased the number of people that can be oceanographers and can contribute to a better understanding of the ocean. That's something I'm most proud of.
And then just last question is, what can we expect to see after the mission ends?
After the mission ends, I think we are, we'll start planning the next mission, whatever that may be. Maybe we'll try to do it faster. Maybe we'll have some new technology. We're not going to stop. We've been working with Rutgers University with gliders since the beginning. We'll find the next challenge. We'll find the next area that we need to do. We'll try to show how we can increase the numbers of these vehicles out there to help, as Scott said, the amount of samples that we're getting, the amount of data that we're getting, the amount of people that we can help. And that's what it's all about.
So we'll have a much more robust system We know that. We'll have 4, maybe 5 years of time on this vehicle where we've built a lot of experience. During that time, there will be more vehicles built and they will be spread around the world. And those will be adding to the databases and the knowledge base and the operational knowledge that we have of how to use these systems. And so what I look forward to is the same thing we saw with the Slocum gliders many years ago. You know, we were one of the first that started using them, and okay, we had a big fleet of 1 and 2 and 10. Now there's 1,200 of them out there doing this sampling. And so hopefully we'll see this rapid growth of this new style of glider and the new collaborations that it will develop. The Slocum gliders, we develop many regional pockets around the world. And this is our opportunity to link all those glider ports on one global mission. And those global missions, I think, will continue from then on.
Well, I hope the launch goes well. I hope the mission as a whole is very successful. And we're excited to see what's next. And thank you guys all so much for being here today.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.